You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network. This is the ThunderQuack Podcast, the official podcast of ThunderQuack Podcast Network, where anything can happen. So strap yourselves in and hold on to your butts. It's ThunderQuack time!
Hello and welcome to the ThunderQuack Podcast Network Avengers Endgame Spoilercast. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen, and joining me on this Spoilercast, it's an MCU Spoilercast, so I got to bring in Kurtis Findlay from the Epic Marvel Podcast.
That's right. Glad to be here.
And we are going to go into full spoilers on Endgame. Hopefully you've seen it by now. If you have not seen Endgame and you don't want to be spoiled, I can't stress enough that the title of this is the Endgame Spoilercast. We are going to talk spoilers, and we're going to start as soon as I'm done explaining this. If you've never listened to one of our spoiler casts before and you think, oh, we're gonna just kind of give a review and then go into spoilers, no, we're gonna go straight. Like our initial thoughts will have spoilers in them. There's no way to get away from it with this movie. The whole thing is a spoiler from the first 5 minutes. So, this is all gonna be spoilers. And
this is your only warning.
This is your only warning. So if you haven't seen it yet, stop the video, stop the audio, go watch Avengers Endgame. I mean, how have you not seen this movie? Everybody else has. And the box office definitely supports that.
I just can't believe it. I was looking at the box office numbers, and it has broken every single record for an opening weekend because it's already hit $1 billion. And that's like double the previous record holder. Mm-hmm. It's unreal. Unreal.
So if you're the one guy who hasn't seen it yet, then stop right now, go and watch Avengers Endgame, and then come back and listen. If you're still here with us, then let's get into it. Kurtis, Avengers Endgame. 22nd movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, 11 years in.
Oh, man.
Directed by Joe and Anthony Russo, starring... I'll give the writers first. Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. And starring Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Karen Gillan, Paul Rudd, Josh Brolin, Brie Larson, Bradley Cooper, Elizabeth Olsen, Evangeline Lilly, Letitia Wright, Chadwick Boseman, Gwyneth Paltrow, Winston Duke, Tessa Thompson, Don Cheadle, Tom Holland, Zoe Saldana, Anthony Mackie, Benedict Cumberbatch, Chris Pratt, and Tom Hiddleston. Not to mention all of the guest stars like Michelle Pfeiffer and
Michael Douglas,
and the list. I mean, Robert Redford.
Thunderbolt Ross. What was his name?
I can't think of it.
How come I can't remember it?
I have IMDb open. I was reading that from Box Office Mojo, but let's.
And Stan Lee.
Yeah, Stan Lee. His final cameo in this one. I mean, it's not hyperbole to say that everybody is in this one. The only characters that are not present in this movie are essentially the ones that are dead, that are just like straight up dead. So,
and even some of those ones came back for this one.
And even like some of those ones came back. Yeah. So the one notable one for me that's not in this movie is Heimdall. And that's, everybody is kind of talking about the major deaths and things having been undone and fixed and whatever, but there's no love for Heimdall out there, and that's kind of disappointing to me because
even through the flashbacks, like we did see old Asgard. Yeah,
but we didn't get to see Heimdall in that scene because instead
the Warriors 3.
Yeah.
Or Sif.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, Sif is one of those characters where like Sif was completely absent from Thor
From
Ragnarok. So
as well, yeah, that's right.
so we really honestly don't know what the status of Sif is. And I think it'll be interesting possibly in Guardians 3 to see what the status of that character is.
For sure.
But let's start at the beginning, and the beginning of this movie is the end of the last movie. The first 5 minutes are catching up with Hawkeye and what happened to him
what
during
a great
the
way
snap.
to start. Yeah,
Yeah.
What a great way to start this movie.
So 5 minutes in, the tears were already flowing as you witness Hawkeye in just a pure moment of terror. As his family just disappears, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's not part of the battle. He like I think one of the biggest things is that the way we experience the final fight in Infinity War is a little bit different than what actually happened. And that's sort of the virtue of cinematic filmmaking.
What do you mean by that?
We cut back and forth between different characters on the battlefield doing different things, not to mention cutting back and forth between Titan. We're cutting back between Titan, Nidavellir, and Earth, Wakanda, right?
Yeah.
And so that is drawn out to about probably 45 minutes of screen time from when the battle kind of begins. But what we actually learn in the post-credit scene of Infinity War is that the battle starts and then it ends pretty quick. Nick Fury and Maria Hill are essentially just mobilizing S.H.I.E.L.D. and then the snap happens.
Right. Yeah.
Which says that like no one really knew what was happening in Wakanda. And the Avengers themselves didn't really make it known. So it's not like the Battle of New York where it started and then there was time for the news to start telling the rest of the world about what was happening. It happened in Wakanda, which is a country that is very closed off, even post Black Panther. We're like right after that, so they haven't really started to integrate yet into the global culture. So they're still very cut off from the rest of the world, and I'm like the rest of the world's kind of still reeling from what happened with in New York with the Maw and that ship and all that, but not really, like nobody knows that this is happening in Wakanda, right? So the battle kind of starts, and I think it's expected that the battle in Wakanda is like maybe like 15-20 minutes, right? Because if you kind of assume that Nidavellir and Titan and Earth, like the Wakanda battle, are all happening at the same time, and if you like laid those over one another, which actually there are videos on YouTube where you can see this, where it kind of like times out.
Right. Yeah, I watched one of those. It was really good.
Yeah, and you see like from the moment that the battle kind of starts, and then Thor forging Stormbreaker and then Stormbreaker going into his hand, and then him appearing on Earth like seconds later, essentially. Like in the movie when we watch it, that happens, and then we cut back to Earth. Actually, maybe even we cut back to Titan. I don't know. I rewatched it last week, but I'd have to have it in front of me to know. Because it all kind of happens so quick. But even still, even with it happening quick, we're cutting back and forth between these different locations. And as we do, we're going like, okay, there's these three storylines that we're following. But then when you really look at it, it's like that happens, and there's not a lot of time between Thor getting back to Earth and Thanos showing up. And the fight between Thanos and the heroes on Titan, with the Guardians and Spider-Man, Strange, and Iron Man, that's not a very long fight when you actually like break it down. Like it's like maybe 5 minutes of actual screen time, but it's cut up in between going back and forth to these other locations. So when you actually look at it, it's like the whole battle kind of just happens. Not to mention if you look at the battlefield in Wakanda and you assume that what's happening over here is happening at the same time as what's happening over there. So Cap and Black Panther are fighting over here, and meanwhile, Black Widow and Okoye and whatever is happening over here, and then Scarlet Witch comes in, and then blah blah, and this is all kind of happening at the same time. But the way that we tell stories visually is that we kind of break that up and show everybody's piece. So it's we don't necessarily see it chronologically.
Did Shuri give an indication of how long she needed in order to take the stone out of Vision?
No, they start, and then she goes, and they say, like, how long do you need? And she says, as much time as you can give me.
Okay.
Like, so they never really say, and we never really find out how far she got into saving Vision. Something that will probably be explored in a Disney Plus series. But, so it's, all of that happens, and then and Hawkeye is none the wiser. Obviously, we know from Ant-Man and the Wasp, from the post-credit scene in that, Ant-Man doesn't know what's going on. Nobody in San Francisco knows what's going on. Like, the rest of the world is kind of just going on with their lives. And then it happens. And that's where we pick up at the beginning of this movie. And then we jump to outer space, to the void, and the Guardians ship, the Benatar is their new one. It's not the Milan.
I love it. It's called Benatar.
And obviously Nebula and Iron Man being the only two to survive on Titan. They've gotten the ship working, and but only for 48 hours, and then it died in space. So they're on, like, bare bones life support. They don't have any food. And we don't really know how long it's been, but it's been long enough that Tony Stark is very malnourished and considers himself on the brink of death. And there's even a moment there when he lays down and Nebula comes over.
Nebula thinks that he's dead.
Yeah, like, you kind of like get the impression that, like, is he dead? And then she puts him in the chair, and you see his eyes moving because he's in REM sleep. And then out of nowhere, the Deus Ex Machina shows up and saves them. The Deus Ex Machina, namely being Captain Marvel.
Yes.
And now this is the really interesting part, because if you decided to skip Captain Marvel, which that was dumb, don't do that. But if you decided to skip that, or more likely, if you saw Captain Marvel, but you didn't stick around for the post-credit scene because you're one of those people, oh, man, there's so many things wrong with that. At this stage, it's like we know they're going to tell story in the post-credit scene. If you didn't stick around for that, actually, I mean, like, it's the mid-credit scene even for this one, then you don't have the context that Carol shows up soon after the events of Infinity War, and then is sent out to find Tony. But we actually, none of that happens on screen. It doesn't even happen in that post-credit scene. It's just implied that basically she showed up, and the first thing they said to her was like, "You got to go find Tony." Like we don't even know where he went.
Like I really like the pacing of this movie because it was 3 hours. There was so much there. And they skip moments like that where stuff that's easily implied in order to spend more time taking their time telling, Hawkeye's story or something like that. I thought all of the choices of what they decided to put in there and not put in there were quite well thought out.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of not a lot of characters to catch up with, because I think the majority of the characters were in Infinity War, but we definitely have Ant-Man and Hawkeye that we need to figure out what's going on with them. I've seen
that was also.
Sorry, go ahead.
I thought that was also great. Just spending basically no time getting Ant-Man back. I thought that there would be a huge expedition, or they'd figure out how to, they have to go in there and get him out. But no, he just kind of pops back out. And I thought that was actually just a perfect way to do that.
Yeah, I love it because in Infinity War, Strange says, there's 14,605 futures that he looked at, and they only win in one of them. And in the one where they win, a rat has to walk across the keyboard and hit the switch in just the right way that it opens the quantum tunnel back up. So I mean, we get the scene with Cap. Actually, we're kind of skipping ahead. Iron Man comes back. He's looking a lot worse for wear. Everybody kind of meets the ship in the field, and Cap helps him out. And you think for a second, like, oh, maybe they'll be okay after everything.
Hold on a second. Are we actually going to recap the entire 3-hour movie like this?
No,
because that's going to take a long time.
No, but these are kind of the important pieces, right? Because like we'll jump around when we get to the time heists. Like we can jump around a lot more.
Yeah.
But this is sort of, to me, this is like the meat of the first act of the story, right? Is kind of this stuff between Cap and Tony.
Right.
So Cap and Tony, like they kind of have words. More on the Tony side than anything.
I was actually really surprised to see them pick up kind of actually just where they left off
in Civil War,
and they're still arguing over the same thing.
Yeah,
which I guess neither of them have shown that they've changed their views on the subject. So of course. I figured there'd be more of a tearful reunion of sorts, but that's
Cap just kind of keeps his mouth shut, right? Like he doesn't really say anything, because I think there's an element here of Tony having been absolutely right. That when he kind of says like, oh, I seem to remember saying that we needed to build a suit of armor around the world, damn your freedoms or whatever. And in this particular instance, he was right, I think. Like, I think that's one of the interesting things, because obviously if we flash back to Civil War, we go, okay, there's two sides to the argument, but that in Civil War, we're thinking very much just about Earth. Like, Civil War is one of the rare MCU movies that doesn't have anything to do with an Infinity Stone. It's just about the heroes and the Sokovia Accords and all that. Right. And that ends up sort of, I think, sort of obfuscating the real issue that Tony has, which is like, I built those robots in order to protect the world from aliens because those aliens are coming back. And now we're arguing amongst each other instead of doing what we should be, which is preparing for the end game, right? Like preparing for when Thanos shows up. And obviously that vision that he had that he's terrified of coming true. And it kind of did. I mean, not in the exact same way, but it definitely did.
Yeah.
With so many people dying. I like the mentions of Spider-Man, when he says, like I lost the kid, I lost, and the Cap's like, no, we lost, right? And so there's a lot of points in this movie of Cap sort of getting shut down by other people, of them being like, look, your optimism thing, like your look on the bright side thing, it just doesn't work. It's not like, that's not the reality that we're living in. Like, this is bad things happened, and there's no getting away from that. And Tony kind of lets him have it, right? So I guess it's after that we jump 5 years, right? Which I don't know. I think a lot of people expected. I think just based on the appearance of some of the characters, you could kind of tell that's what they were gonna do. 5 years was like a significant jump, though. And maybe longer than some people expected, but
I knew there would be some sort of jump, but 5 years is really substantial. I mean, that's like we saw with Cassie, is a teenager now, and that's enough time for significant, like, I guess, for the world to kind of figure out how to I don't know, be a functional world again after what had happened. And the person I think that it takes the most toll on is actually Black Widow, who seems to have appointed herself as, like, I know there's no Shield per se, or we don't even really get to know what's going on with Shield at this point, but she kind of takes on the world protector role, like, on her own, and it really wears her down.
Yeah, she's kind of running point for all of these teams out in the field, and everybody's kind of out there doing what they can. Cap is doing these support group things, but others are out there.
In that support group, did you see Jim Starlin's cameo?
I did, yeah. I didn't. I mean, like, I didn't necessarily notice that when I was watching the movie, but I did hear about it.
Yeah.
Oh, we skipped over the whole all of them going and finding Thanos and then killing him. But,
yeah, that's right.
But it's almost that's it. That's what it is. Like they just kind of Nebula gives them the idea of where he'll be. They check. They see that he used the stones again. They go after him. They find him. He's destroyed the stones. That's what they picked up. That was the energy signature. And then as they're sort of he's about to start monologuing, Thor just chops his head off.
And at that point, I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen now.
Yeah.
Like, as I was sitting there, it's like they just kind of threw any predictable thing out the window, and now I can just enjoy the movie because and be taken along for the ride. Because I don't know if the time travel thing had been theorized or what by fans, but I'd stayed away from all of that stuff. I didn't want to engage in any of it. So I was like, this is great. He's dead. I don't know what's going to happen now.
Yeah, there were a lot of set photos of Steve Rogers in the 2012 Cap suit. Of Chris Evans in that suit. And so there was a lot of speculation of like, oh, we're clearly going to have some time travel in this.
Okay, yeah, see, I didn't know that, so that's good. I'm glad I stayed away from all of that because it was a nice surprise. It was completely. I was totally excited that we were talking about time travel.
Yeah, well, and I think that Ant-Man and the Wasp put people on that track already because all of the talk, like, there's a lot of talk in Ant-Man and the Wasp of quantum realm, time vortexes, blah, 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 especially in the post-credit scene. And it's kind of like, why would you mention that if that wasn't going to be important?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, so that happens. And that to me is kind of like, if you look at it in comic book terms, I think you can actually break down this movie into 6 issues. And you can kind of see how it breaks into a comic book story arc, maybe 6 to 8, somewhere around there. But it does break into 3 1 hour acts. If you look at it that way.
Right.
And that's the beginning when they try and bring the team back together, and they come up with the time travel concept, the time heist itself, and then the battle at the end. So Ant-Man having gotten out, he goes looking for the rest of the Avengers. After obviously we talked about he finds out that his daughter's still alive and that it's been 5 years. And he shows up and basically says, we got to build a time machine.
I loved Kim coming out of there.
Yeah.
Because this was 5 years later. So he emerges from the van into this completely devastated world.
Yeah.
And we are seeing this devastated world also for the first time. So we are Scott is the everyman character for our sake. Mm-hmm. It's great storytelling because as he's experiencing it, we are also experiencing it.
Yeah, he was. If you had to pick a protagonist for this story, and comics will often do this. They'll take it when they do the events. They'll pick a central character, and everything will kind of focus on them experiencing a lot of the stuff. And there might be like mini series and stuff like that branch off out of it, where you get to see other perspectives. But for Endgame, to me, it really is Scott, because he's the one character that's kind of there from the beginning. Once he gets out, obviously, of the quantum realm, out of the tunnel, We kind of experience a lot of it through him. And he's the character that reminds us very often in this movie that this is ridiculous and awesome and super fun.
I loved it. He was my favorite character in that movie. I've always loved Paul Rudd's take on the character, and he was just so fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, later on in the movie, when they're coming up with the plan for the time heist, once they've got time travel figured out, and they're like, okay, now that we know the how, we got to find out the when. And they're going through and figuring everything out, and Thor is talking about the Aether, and he's telling the story, and everybody else is like, oh my god, Thor is like, he's lost it, right? Like, what's going on with this guy? He's in some serious mental health troubles at the moment. And then it cuts to Paul Rudd, who's sitting there with just the biggest, goofiest grin on his face. He's just, this is a great story, which I think is a great meta narrative as well, because Thor: The Dark World is pretty roundly recognized as the worst of the MCU films.
Right. Yes.
And there are lots of reasons for that, and like the director changes and all sorts of things. But it's just funny that of all of the stories that get straight up recapped in this movie, the one movie that it's like that probably a lot of people were told, like, oh, you can skip Thor: The Dark World in your rewatch, just skip it. And it's like, actually, it ends up being pretty important. But
it actually does, and like all of the stuff that happened in that they reference. I mean, I guess Loki died, or supposedly Thor's mom, and the Aether, the relationship between Thor and Jane, like all of that stuff that he talks about, all happens in that one movie. And we read it off because it was really boring. But a lot of stuff actually happened, and plus the appearance of the Infinity Stone in that one.
So we're kind of jumping around now, but because we skipped over one of my favorite inclusions in this movie, which is when we catch up with Tony Stark 5 years later, we find out that he's got a daughter. And they kind of live out in the woods. It's as far away from the Tony Stark that we know from the Iron Man movies as you can get. They're kind of living a not so simple life out.
He tried to do that in Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
Because Iron Man 3, he was dealing with his PTSD from what happened in Avengers 1.
Yeah.
And he tries to run away at that point. And I think he did that again here after the battle with Thanos.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think after Infinity War, I mean, he kind of says it at the beginning of the movies when he's talking to Pepper through the recording and saying, no more surprises, but I was hoping I could pull off one more. And then I think he gets back and he goes like, I'm done. I'm done. I've given everything that I have to the Avengers, and I can't do this anymore. I want to live a life, and I can't do that if we're a part of all of this. And then I think the other thing is that when you think about the real ramifications, and this is where Thanos's ideology just totally falls apart. On a planet like Earth, where it's a global economy and everybody's kind of interconnected, like the symbiosis of what one happens to the one affects the other, and you remove half of the population of that planet, all of a sudden agriculture is going to slow to a crawl. Shipping is like the wealth of knowledge and experience that you're going to lose in that moment is going to affect production on so many levels. It's going to affect the global economy. You're talking about a major stock market crash. And that's just on Earth, right? I mean, like the rest of the galaxy, and that's sort of Captain Marvel's point of like the rest of the galaxy is in just as much trouble, and or not even galaxy, but like universe. There are other planets out there, and they don't have the Avengers to protect them. And and I think like that's Ronan's storyline, right? That's Hawkeye's continuing story, is that he's out there obviously lawlessness is going to kind of take over to a certain degree in a lot of areas. Organizations like the Yakuza are going to seize that opportunity. And he decides to go out there and just kind of deal with it in the most blunt way he knows how.
Right.
And he does. And that's where Black Widow catches up with him. So he's in a real bad way in this movie. But on the flip side of that, Tony Stark is like the happiest that we've seen him despite everything. And when they show up on his door to talk to him about time travel, he roundly dismisses it and it's just basically like, it's suicide. It's a suicide mission. Like, there's no way that this will work. So, like, we're not even going to try it. But then obviously he can't stop himself, right? He's Iron Man. And despite the danger that it's going to put his family in, he figures it out. He figures out time travel.
With Hawkeye,
yeah,
I feel like we already know that they've clearly established that he cares so much for his family.
Yeah.
Well, we've also established that he never shies away from a fight, and he is he's a soldier and follows orders and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I can just imagine that how upset and angry he must have been when he found out what happened and that he wasn't called to join the fight.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I know he probably couldn't have gotten to Wakanda across on the other side of the world in time or whatever, but like he didn't even have a clue. And so he's really angry at Thanos, but he's gone. So he has to take out his rage and his, everything that he's feeling in some sort of way, and that's why he creates this new personality.
Yeah, well, and it's in his line, right, where he says to the Yakuza boss, he says the half of the world is gone. They got Thanos, and you get me.
Yeah,
right. Like he sort of sees himself as balancing things. And that Ronin persona from the comics is a character who isn't exactly like that was that a lot of the stories that involve Ronin is Hawkeye is not exactly heroic, right?
Yeah.
Like Ronin kind of comes out of that anti-hero era of comics, and an attempt to make Hawkeye less arrow guy and more cool samurai guy,
right.
Which to me is like a silly thing to do, because I think that Hawkeye is cool enough all on his own. But that said, there's a lot of fans of Ronin out there, so
yeah,
I'm sure that they were very, very happy to see him in that persona. We never get a mention of Ronin. Because I think it probably would have been a little bit confusing, considering a bad guy from other films is Ronan the Accuser, right? So,
that's very true.
I think they just wanted to avoid that.
I wonder if there's a sense of cultural appropriation with that title as well.
Sure, yeah, that could be part of it, but I don't know if that would stop them necessarily.
Yeah, maybe not.
It hasn't stopped Hollywood in the past, but I don't know, maybe they are.
Well, yeah, it didn't stop them from using the name Mandarin, so
exactly. Yeah. So the other character that we haven't talked about is Professor Hulk.
Oh man, so good.
Yeah, when Tony turns them down, they go to the next biggest brain they can think of, which is Bruce Banner, who has over the last 5 years found a way to coexist with the Hulk persona. And there's actually a healthy balance of the two characters in this character, because although Banner is in much more control of the Hulk, there are elements to this persona that are not Bruce Banner. They are very much not Bruce Banner. The outgoing, gregarious nature is not Bruce Banner. At least not as we've seen him in the MCU, right?
Yeah.
He's been very pessimistic, very pragmatic, very nervous,
paranoid, nervous. Exactly.
And we don't see any of that in the Banner Hulk, Professor Hulk persona. We see a very confident, very gregarious, outgoing version of Bruce Banner. And to me, that is the melding of the Hulk and Bruce Banner's personalities, where the Hulk is very much very confident and very arrogant and all of that sort of thing. And all of the stuff with like, oh, got fans and stuff like that. And sort of just the way that he talks is very, he's very sure of himself, which is not something that we've been used to seeing. But yeah, I love it. I love that they went this route with it. When there were rumors that we were going to get Gray Hulk or Professor Hulk in this one, that character in the comics is much more aggressive. He's much more kind of cutthroat, like pragmatic to a fault. Like essentially a supervillain. I mean, like in many of the incarnations of Gray Hulk and Professor Hulk, when he's got the smarts but he's also the Hulk, he becomes more like a Doctor Doom type of character than he does a hero, right? Like he's kind of got that I don't really care about puny humans, which is the Hulk, and then he's got the intelligence of Bruce Banner at his disposal. But right. This is much more Bruce Banner in control, not the Hulk in control, using the Hulk's strength while maintaining his intellect, right? So I like that they went that way with it, because otherwise he could have been a very adversarial character, and it would have been very difficult to get along with him. But instead, we get sort of this goofy Hulk that, for my money, is the best version of this character that we've gotten yet. I love it, and I'm very interested to see in the future with stories on Earth, especially Avengers based stories, like, is he ever going to go back to being Bruce Banner, or are we always going to have Professor Hulk from now on? Is that status quo for this character?
Well, I think it can go back and forth. I mean, that happens in the comics as well. Every so often a writer will bring out the Professor Hulk character just to tell a good story, because there's stories that you need to tell with him like that. I think that this was a smart move, and judging on how positive people are reacting to the character, like if Universal plays ball, we could see a series of Hulk movies now that would actually perform well.
Yeah, well, and I think it's time for Universal to realize that this is in their best interest, right?
Yeah, sure.
Sony figured it out. Fox, not so much, but Marvel dealt with that. Well, Disney dealt with that the best way that they could think of. So essentially, let's skip forward, because we figure out time travel. Everything's going to work. We've got the great gag with Scott. And Tony shows up and he's like, let me guess, he turned into a baby. You're not so much pushing Lang through time as you're pushing time through Lang, which I thought was just like...
That was, great concept.
Time travel is a tricky thing in storytelling. And the key is having enough science that you can explain your rules.
Yeah.
But science that is sort of soft enough that you can still tell your story. Right. And I feel like they found a perfect balance. And I feel like the most interesting thing they did was to move away from the classic cinematic time travel storytelling tropes of changing the past changes the future. If I go back and kill if I'm killed in the past, I'll cease to exist now. And they really put some serious quantum physics thinking behind it, and go, when Hulk explains, if you go back into the past, that becomes like that's your future, and like the present becomes your past. Nothing you do in the past can now affect the present that you just came from, because for you personally in your timeline, that is your future. And then on top of that, the fact that it's all tied to the quantum realm and quantum physics, and entanglement, which they explore a little bit with Nebula's character, essentially the idea of quantum entanglement is kind of like a computer having an IP address, right? Every atom, every molecule has a quantum signature, and quantum entanglement is the idea of two atoms having the same signature, which we've observed in nature. Like, this is real science. And essentially, if you think of an atom as like a physical object, I mean, it is a physical object, but like as a ball, right?
Yeah.
And floating in space. And if you've got two of these balls and they're the same, they have the same quantum signature, you strike one ball, the other one vibrates, right? And that's sort of the key to Tony's whole thing of like you need a GPS. You essentially need a thing that's going to tune in on those quantum signatures so that you can travel back and forth between these times without losing your timeline. Because if they go back in time, they're going to create an alternate timeline, but they want to return back to their point of origin. So you kind of have to have those addresses back and forth, those signatures back and forth. And Tony figures that out, and they figure out that they can basically, they don't have the stones now because they've been destroyed. So they're going to go back in time and find all of the places where the stones are and bring them back to the present and snap everybody back.
Right.
Which is a great plan. And then they, like I said, they go like, hey, we know the how, but now we have to figure out the when. And I love this sequence because this is the characters in universe doing the kind of thinking that fans do when we're speculating about the next movie.
Yes.
Of going
totally.
like, well, you know, like if you really think about it, like, well, if this character's here and that character's there. And I love the moment when they're all kind of like they're all laying on the table.
Yeah.
And
Black Widow has her.
And Black Widow's like, hold up. If you go to the right time, there's 3 stones in New York, which is this great sort of, again, a meta narrative of like, what a coincidence that at some point in time in this story, we had 3 Infinity Stones in New York City. Of course, we learned that their calculation is a little bit off, although thankfully the ancient one is there with the time stone.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit contrived. It's a little bit coincidental and a little bit convenient, but that's 3 C's
not
for
exactly. I mean, the Sanctum Sanctorum had access to all the different places in the world,
Yes.
right? So, and the ancient one could easily come in and out of New York anytime she wanted to.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Like, yeah, the story supports it, but it's just funny to sort of retcon that over on Bleecker Street while all of this was happening, over at the Avengers Tower, there was a really old bald lady using her fans to take out aliens, and nobody noticed.
I love that. I was like, and it's like you can just imagine also like I guess Daredevil wasn't around at this point in the timeline, but like all those other heroes that are in existence are also doing their thing. We just never get to see them.
Yeah.
It's like how when in Homecoming we saw Damage Control for the first time, even though that movie came out years after the first Avengers, but you know they were on the scene, cleaning up the mess.
Yeah, we go back and we kind of insert that back in. So and this is one of the things that I love the most about this movie is when we go back in time, for all of the crap they give Back to the Future, they steal from Back to the Future 2 in the best way possible. Because one of the best parts, I mean, the future in Back to the Future 2 is obviously the best part of the entire Back to the Future franchise. But the second best part for me is the climax of Back to the Future 2 when we're in 1955 and we're trying to get back the almanac, and you've got the moments of Marty's on stage and he's playing the song, and from Back to the Future 1, but Back to the Future 2, Marty is climbing up in the rafters and he's looking over at himself playing the music, and we're getting this additional perspective. We see all of these other moments from the first movie from different viewpoints. as well as like new scenes that we didn't get to see, like Strickland taking the almanac and blah 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 and all that sort of stuff.
That's exactly how it plays out in this.
Yeah, and that's what we get here. We get Avengers ends with, I think I'll have, if it's all the same, I think I'll have that drink now. And then we're okay, and then we cut to whatever, to Loki going back to Asgard, Loki and Thor going back to Asgard with the stone,
right?
With the Tesseract, and them not understanding that the staff is another Infinity Stone. So we get to see the moment that the staff falls into the hands of Hydra, which is great. And then we get all of the interference there, and we get the recreation of several key moments from Avengers. So there's a great moment where Tony jumps off the building and is sort of plummeting from the top of Avengers Tower, and then the nanosuit comes around, and which is very, very reminiscent of when he gets thrown off the building in Avengers, and then the new suit comes and rescues him, right? Like it forms around him and saves him. They kind of recreated that shot to a certain degree. And then the moment in the elevator with Cap that recreates the scene from Winter Soldier.
From Winter Soldier, yeah. Brilliant.
And then
he gets out of there without throwing a punch this time.
Yeah, he leans in the Hail Hydra. That was
so perfect.
It's so good. And then if that weren't good enough, then Cap has to fight Cap. And we get the great moment. We get the great we get a lot of great moments in that fight, but like at the end of it when he looks and he's like, that is America's ass.
That was so great.
And then with Tony and Thor, as Ant-Man pops the thing on the arc reactor, and the arc reactor goes out for a second, and then Thor's like, hold up, I'm gonna try something. I have no idea if this is gonna work, and he puts the hammer to his chest, just taps it to bring him back, and they have the great moment of like, I didn't know if that was gonna work. That was totally awesome. And it's so great because I think what they did really well was they took the lessons that they've learned over the last 7 years since Avengers, with the humor and obviously with really nailing the character of Thor. And they went back and they injected a little bit of today's Thor into the 2012 Thor in that scene.
Yep. To make him, it just makes the continuity of his character seem a little bit more consistent. Yeah. And
they kind of did stuff like that all over the place with this. Obviously on Morag when we see Peter Quill and the Guardians movies are so heightened with the way that they use the music, and when we're in universe,
so funny.
In that
when
story,
he's dancing into it and singing to himself.
Yeah, we get it because we're experiencing it from Star-Lord's perspective. We never questioned the music and the logo and all that stuff. So that's so iconic now.
Yeah.
That to get it from the other side, and it's like he's just singing off tune, and he's a total idiot. And Rhodey, I love Rhodey and Nebula was such a great pairing. So in that moment, because they're both so kind of dry with their humor, and Rhodey is very much always like, all these people are stupid. Like, I'm the only real soldier here. Like a lot of the time, that's sort of his joke. We had the moment with Ant-Man where he lands and he's like, "What's up, regular size man?" So it's that sort of humor, and Nebula is very similar in that way. And then we get the awesome moment after she pulls her hand out and she feels kind of ashamed of this robot hand. And she says, I wasn't always this way. And then Rhodey has the great line. There are so many things that they do to make Nebula feel included as part of the team, as an Avenger. From Tony and her on the ship with playing the football with the little folded piece of paper, all that, to this moment with Rhodey, where Rhodey goes, we work with what we got, right? Which is him like acknowledging, like, look, I got prosthetics on my legs, like I'm half robot too. And that pairing is so smart in that way, because I don't think that that's something that's apparent to a lot of viewers, and they kind of put it right there for everybody to go like, oh, Rhodey's a more complicated character than I think a lot of people give him credit for, right? So for him to relate to her on that level I think goes a long way towards her becoming a hero in this story. So everybody treating her as an equal and as part of this team, and it's gonna be really interesting in Guardians 3 to see what that payoff is, and if she's like a full on hero in that one. I mean, obviously she's still gonna have a little bit of her sadistic qualities, but yeah, if there's another protagonist in this story, you kind of got Ant-Man on one side, and I think you have Nebula on the other side. Nebula, I think, goes through one of the best arcs in this movie.
Yeah, totally. I thought the way they used her was brilliant. I didn't expect her to be so prominent in this movie. Like she was one of the, maybe more of a main character than some of the actual Avengers.
Yeah.
She was fantastic. What a great character. I had no idea when she appeared in the first Guardians movie that she would become such a fantastic part of the team.
And to be honest, I think that Nebula is one of the weakest parts of Guardians of the Galaxy. She's very flat, very one-dimensional. And a bit of a nuisance. I mean, like, just by the nature of her storyline in that.
Well, we see that come out in when they do the time travel, and we get to meet old Nebula as she used to be. Yeah. And you definitely see the contrast of how far she's come, even though like you don't realize it. Her development is very subtle through Guardians 2. Yeah. To the point where we are right now. Yeah, they've done a really good job with her character. Yeah,
they really nailed that. So one of the most important things for her inclusion in this, for her being so prominent, obviously she's in the movie twice, so that makes her a more prominent character just by virtue of the fact that she's represented by two characters. Yeah. But the plan would have gone off without a hitch if not for the fact that Nebula was part of it. So Nebula going back into 2014 ends up tipping off Thanos and the what is it? It's the Black Order. Is that the
the Black Order?
That the Avengers are up to this, and so again we go back to that quantum entanglement thing. Their consciousnesses are on the same network, so they're able to access each other, and it sort of happens by accident. And we've got the moment of her R2-D2 hologram projection in front of Thanos that tips them off that the Avengers are planning to unsnap all of his work, and we get the great moment of him being like
I did
so
it
works like destiny. He's proud of it. And he's like, this is your future, and he's like, no, this is my destiny. And then he sees his own death, and he this is what Thanos is such an interesting character, because he sees it and he's happy because he's like, destiny fulfilled. It's like, that's it, like I did my thing and then they killed me, and that's the way it goes. And then when he realizes like, oh, they're planning to collect all the stones in order to unsnap it, he has his revelation of like, I went about this the wrong way. I need to start from scratch. Mm-hmm. And they hatch their plan to follow the Avengers back to 2019 and attempt to ruin everything. And then we get the Cap and Tony having to go back to the 1970s because they fail to get the Tesseract.
That was great.
Loki gets the Tesseract.
Yep.
And so there's an alternate timeline in which Loki has the Tesseract.
Yep, and that's, I'm sure, going to play into the Disney series that's coming up. I thought that was a brilliant way to write for the creators to I don't know, provide something for the TV show that's coming up, because otherwise they'd have to be held to telling only stories that take place during a very, very specific point of time in Loki's life. Yeah. But now they can go anywhere they want. Yeah. Because he's on a whole new stream.
It's such a great way of keeping the character around without undoing the fulfillment of his character arc, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they basically have set it up now that they can do this with a lot of characters, where if they want to revisit somebody, they can, by virtue of the fact that they can use one of these alternate timelines in order to tell a story.
And what's going to be really interesting then with the Disney Plus Loki series is that Loki is still a bad guy at this point.
Yeah,
he hasn't bonded with Thor. This is before he tries to take over Asgard again. And yeah, so it's like it's rebooting his character, I guess.
Yeah,
back to where it was before.
Yeah, it's a lot like Gamora. It's a bit of an undo, but it means that we actually get to go back to the Loki that's a little bit more fun, because he's not bound by morality, right? So
right, exactly.
And the other thing is that we'll probably get to see him go on that journey again of going from being a villain into ultimately becoming a bit more of a hero.
And they can take their time with it more because they have a whole series to play with instead of just a 2-hour movie.
Yes.
However, I don't know. I wonder if they'll. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with him because they don't have the same. Like, I doubt we'll see Thor in that series.
Yeah, no, I doubt it as well. I think that's I think that's the sort of thing that maybe they could do towards the end of it or something, right? Like a series finale would be to bring Thor back into the story. And I think Chris Hemsworth has gone on record in the last week of saying that he will play Thor as long as they keep asking him to play Thor, which is different from some of the other actors. I mean,
like Chris Evans. Yeah,
Chris Evans has very much been like, I think I'm done after this. I think I'm done after this. I think
he's been saying that since Avengers 1.
Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. though, he said very much like, until this character's story is done, I am at their disposal. Like I'm down to play this character. Yeah. Until I die, right? But he's always said like it as the years go on, it gets more and more ridiculous of, this old man in the Iron Man suit. So I think that he kind of saw it for what it was. And I don't think it's the last we're going to see of Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark in the MCU. I think that we will see him as a hologram AI construct in the future, but with that they can de-age him, they can keep him as is, they can do whatever they want because he'll be a primarily CG character. Anyways, we'll get ahead of ourselves. We haven't even talked about that yet. Tony and Cap go back to the 1970s. They get the Tesseract there because Loki takes it in 2012. And this gives them the opportunity to have a couple of really great, get more Pym particles and have a really great couple of character moments. Tony gets to hang out with his dad, and it's like, if at this point in the movie you don't realize that Tony Stark's not making it out of this story, him getting to go back and say everything to his dad that he never got to say is the absolute sort of like last exit before you get on the highway to his character's death. This is sort of them going like, okay, like we're going to fulfill everything with this character. He became a father, and in the time since he became a father, and I mean, like, I think that the Peter Parker relationship also informs this. He then has the opportunity to go back and say to his dad, I forgive you. I like, you did the best that you could with what you had. I understand now how difficult it was. I understand now that you were actually trying to do the best for me, even if sometimes the best wasn't the best, right? Because they had a very difficult relationship, and that's something that we explored in Iron Man 2, and sort of came back a little bit in Civil War. And is ultimately fulfilled here. And it closes the loop. It deals with the biggest issue that Tony Stark has, the reason really why he becomes Iron Man in the first place. Sort of all in this perpetual need to please his father, even after his death. And so he gets to close that loop. He gets to say what he never got to say. When he had the chance, and that's that's closure on a story that you don't get unless you're about to kill a character.
I guess I didn't include at that point that Tony was the one that was going to die. I just because this movie was full of those moments.
Yeah.
And so I guess I just didn't even notice. You're probably more in tune to it than I was because you're such a Tony fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was a great moment. Definitely brought a tear to my eye, and yeah, that whole time in the 70s was great too. Cap has his great moment where he sees Peggy in young again. I mean, not as young. She's still 20 years older than he knew her because this is the 70s, or 30 years older. But still in the flesh, moving, living, breathing, but on the other side of this glass. And I just love that you could feel how much he wanted to just reach out there and talk to her, touch her.
Well, and I think this is the beginning of the idea of him going back in time and
absolutely
and living out that life, right?
Yeah.
And I think when he I think two things: him seeing what Tony has in 2019, and then seeing Peggy in the flesh again. I mean, she's obviously been dead since Civil War, so seeing her again. Sort of in her prime, fulfilling their sort of dream, and this idea of her basically running part of SHIELD at that point. I think he looks at that and goes on like this is what I lost. This is when I went into the ice. This is what I missed out on. And so ultimately he decides to go back and deservedly so live out that life. So the last stone that we have to worry about, we didn't really talk about the Thor thing. Is kind of to me it's almost like the quickest of them. It's like Thor and Rocket go, they get the Aether out of Natalie Portman, and sorry,
just before we go on, I forgot in the 70s we got a cameo appearance from James Darcy, who plays Jarvis in the Agent Carter show. He's the only TV show character that makes it into the movie.
Yeah, and actually, this is the only confirmation of one of the TV series being in canon. So,
well, that's not true.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Why
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't canon.
Why?
They've said it's not canon.
But we have they've interspersed clips from the movies in some of the episodes.
They've put movie stuff into the show, but they've never taken show stuff and had it have anything to do with the movies.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So the Inhuman stuff negates Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from being anything to do with the movies from that point forward. And Feige has basically said in the last couple of years that it was an experiment and it didn't work, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not part of the MCU. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I guess it's an alternate timeline.
It exists in the same area as the Netflix stories do, where it's the Netflix stories are very much tangents off of the MCU, but they are not the MCU because they don't affect the films. But this is an instance where now we can say Agent Carter is definitely part of the MCU. I think that you can say that story is the official story of the creation of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Howard Stark and Peggy Carter and Jarvis and all that. That's all legit. But the biggest thing with that is that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has Coulson and I guess Maria Hill is in one episode, and there's a 5-minute scene with Nick Fury in the first season. But
there's a couple he makes a couple appearances.
Does he? Okay. But Agent Carter is that's Haley Atwell, and it's I can't remember Dominic something.
Oh yeah, Dominic, whatever, who plays Howard Stark.
Yeah, that plays
Yeah.
Howard Stark. Like those are the movie actors in a TV show, right? Like those actors are the same people.
It's the same though with Agent Shield. We got Jamie Alexander as Sif in one episode.
In one episode, yeah.
But I mean, it's
not really an ongoing story, though. You know, like I know that you like Agents of Shield, so you're gonna defend it, but
it's like as soon as they timed it so perfectly when Hydra infiltrated, or when Hydra was exposed in Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
it was the very next episode of Agents of Shield that aired. The same thing happened.
Yeah. Yes, like I said, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was absolutely affected by the MCU, but nothing that ever happens on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ever affects anything in the MCU. Right? Like, it doesn't go both ways. So it's a weird limbo that show is in, but when they
that's why Coulson never appears again in any of these other movies, which I thought that was the biggest one of not the biggest misstep, but a nitpicky misstep that I was like, how come Coulson? Everybody else is in this movie, but not Coulson.
Yeah. Well, he can't be because they shot them into the future and outer space, right? Isn't that the current storyline on S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Well, they came back at the end of the season. They came back, and so but Coulson is critically ill. He's currently living out the remainder of his days in Tahiti with Agent May. So he's not in North America, but they are in the correct time. And like, for all I know, he could have been dusted. I don't know. But,
who knows? To me, it's totally inconsequential. That's the thing, is that like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like at a certain point, they went like, no, we can't keep this connected to the movies. And
that's too bad.
They just kind of let it go.
They could have, but they decided not to.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, because there's a new Ghost Rider series that was just announced, and they're apparently going to use the same actor for that show. So we'll see if there's any crossover there.
Interesting. Cool. So Thor talks to his mom and finds out that even though he's fat, that he's still worthy.
I thought that was a great scene. And it was such a, because here's another instance of Thor being able to talk to his mom in a way that he hadn't before, because of the character development that he has gone through in these past few movies. Same with, and like there are parallels between him and Tony in their flashback scenes. Especially since Thor knows that his mom is about to die.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that, because he's going through his own PTSD, he's depressed, he's gained a lot of weight because of it. He feels really bad about himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it took his mom telling him that that he's still worthy, rather than his hammer. His hammer was the confirmation, but I'm glad that he came to accept himself because of what his mom was telling him, rather than picking up the hammer and realizing that he can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's what she says to him gives him the idea that he could still use the hammer.
Yeah, right? and he makes the decision to carry on and forge through and to fight the fight.
Yeah.
Before he even thinks about the hammer.
Yeah, and the interesting question, because that we never really got to explore, because Mjolnir was already destroyed, is was he worthy in that time period, right? Or until he kind of had his realization? Because if we go back to Thor 1, there is a period of time where he's not worthy to wield the hammer, and
right,
he has to go through a journey in that movie. In order to get back the powers of Thor. So his arc has been so interesting, because they've played it, especially since Ragnarok, they've played it up as comedy, but there are moments in Ragnarok, and then definitely moments in Infinity War where we get to sort of actually hear him verbalize just how rough his life has been since the beginning of his journey in Thor, right? And the thing is, like, up until that point, his life was super easy. He was a spoiled brat, right? And that's the whole point of the first Thor movie, is that he has to learn like that he's not entitled to anything. That leading is a responsibility and blah blah blah. And the great thing is that the culmination of that story for him is that he does realize that leading is a responsibility, and although he might be worthy to wield the powers of Thor, he's not the king of Asgard. At least, like, and the sort of what his mom says to him of like, we all fail at who we're supposed to be, right? And him going like, well, then I'm not going to be that guy anymore. I'm going to go do my own thing. And so where we leave him at the end of the movie going off with the Guardians, I think is such a great close to that story of him ultimately becoming the king of Asgard. And now we get to start a new chapter with Thor as a completely, I would say, like, self-actualized character. And it'll be really interesting to see what that means moving forward, because I think that all the baggage that he's been carrying around since the first Thor, he's now dealt with, right? And we can move forward, and his character doesn't have to be dependent on the tragedy that's defined him this far. So, plus he'll be with the Guardians, so I think it'll be very funny. But although we don't have confirmation that he's in Guardians 3, that's a big assumption from a lot of people.
Yeah, but he'll be there.
Yeah. So him and Rocket... Sorry, go ahead.
I was completely surprised and almost kind of shocked that Jane Foster actually, like Natalie Portman actually did a scene for this movie.
She didn't do a scene for this movie. That's footage from The Dark World.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
When she gets out of the bed there?
Yeah. If you notice, like, she doesn't interact with anybody. No,
and she doesn't have any lines, but I figure they just didn't want to pay her that much.
The one line that she has is from The Dark World, and it's when they're giving her the clothes and she goes back into her room.
Okay. Yeah. I see. I'm so not familiar with the Thor Dark World. I've seen it 1.5 times.
Yeah, and because I just watched everything last year in the lead up to Infinity War, it's still fairly fresh in my mind. But I'm like 99% positive that that's just footage from Dark World, and they just CG'd in Rocket, which is very easy to do
because they credited her at the end. Like, she had her own title, so I figured that there was new footage. But
she probably got paid a pretty good paycheck for them to use her likeness in the movie. But I don't think that she ever... Because so what happened with The Dark World is that I can't remember the director, but there was a director hired for The Dark World that was recommended by Natalie Portman. It's the only reason that she came back for the second movie. And then they ran into production troubles. And this was, you have to remember, this is back in the era of Marvel Studios they hadn't really found their stride yet. They were still figuring it out. They'd had success with the first round of movies, but going into the sequels, they were still trying to figure it out. And they were hiring a lot of sort of very independently minded auteur directors who had their own visions, and that wasn't working, right? So Edgar Wright left the Ant-Man project later on down the road. This happened with Thor, with Dark World. There were a couple of moments in there where it was like they tried to do some stuff and it didn't really work out. The only thing from that era that worked really well was James Gunn. He's really the only piece, and they brought the Russos in at that point as well, but they kind of brought the Russos in as a response to what was going on. And that was when they realized, like, oh, we actually need directors who are more like TV directors, like the Russos, that will come in and they'll maintain the style and they'll maintain the tone. They'll put their own spin on it, and they'll tell a great story, but they're going to be a little bit more. They're going to be willing to play within the set style and tone.
Right.
And since then, I think they've been a lot more shrewd about their directing choices. Their director choices, and bringing in the right people to maintain the MCU feel, right?
Yeah, I think has been very noticeable, and that's good. That's great.
And diverting when it makes sense, like bringing in Taika Waititi for Thor in order to reinvigorate that franchise and bring it in line with the cosmic stuff that James Gunn made popular, right? So
right, yeah.
But again, like that is them looking and going, and like Taika Waititi is a TV director. He's like the directed Flight of the Conchords, right? Like it's a guy that like they went to people who could just that didn't really care, but that could maintain a visual direction in order to keep consistency because they're more used to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool. So all that happens, and then on Vormir, Black Widow and Hawkeye are paired up, and we know what the Soul Stone is, so we know that one of them's gonna die. It's a question of which one's gonna sacrifice themselves in order, like, right. From the outset, the second that you find out that it's the two of them going off in the ship together, you're like, well, come on, you know how this is gonna end, and it's with one of the two of them dead. And there's been some controversy about it. People referring to Black Widow's death as a refrigerator death, which is a trope. I won't go into all the details of that. You can look it up. Women in refrigerators is the trope. It comes from a Green Lantern comic coined by Gail Simone, and is essentially a woman dying to further a man's story. And I don't agree with that. And like I hate that trope. Like they do it on Arrow constantly. They do it in a lot of stuff. It's a really big thing in superhero storytelling that you got to kill people in order to move a character's story forward. But that's not what they do with Black Widow. She didn't die in order to move Clint's story forward. That does happen, but she dies in order to fulfill her story, right. And in order to make good on the promise of the two of those characters from Avengers. They have the moment on the helicarrier in Avengers 1 after he comes back where they talk about read in my ledger, blah, blah, blah. And they over the course of the movies, obviously mostly in Endgame, they've now flipped roles where she's the hero and he's the one who's got read in his ledger. And she says it, like they say it to each other. It's like you know what I've done. You know I'm beyond forgiveness. And she's like, well, you know what I did, and you forgave me. So, you know, like you still have a second chance. This is your second chance. And then she sacrifices herself, not just for him, but for the entire universe. Right? Yeah, and that's what it is. I felt like Black Widow, especially when you see how beaten down she is at the beginning, at the beginning of the 5 years later, when she's taken the responsibility of the entire planet upon herself. Yeah. And this is just the fulfillment of her responsibility. It's the thing that anybody who is, like, if this were Nick Fury's story, he would be doing the same thing. Yeah. And any one of the Avengers in the same, not anyone, but most of the Avengers in the same position would do the same thing. Which is why they have a fight in that scene. Yeah, if you put Cap there, if you put Tony there, if you put Ant-Man there, if you you can pick most of the Avengers, and I think that this story would play out exactly the same. Yeah, they do it with Hawkeye and Black Widow because that has been their through line throughout all of these movies. The connection between these two characters, right? Yeah, they are each other's family. And they've gone through a lot together. So this is the most impactful story that you can tell. And I actually honestly think that it's the opposite of her dying in order to further his story. I think that Hawkeye's story in this movie is to justify her death. Right? Everything that they do with him going in the direction that they did was so that they could tell this story and have Black Widow go out on this note. Like to finish this character in this way and have her die a hero, you have to do what you did with Clint. And then the byproduct of that is that his family's going to come back and he gets to live his life. And then that's what I was going to say is like she also knows that, they're all family. But as soon as they undo the snap, Clint has his family back. I mean, he needs to be there for that. Yeah. She doesn't have that same
that same kind of family.
Yeah, and you have to remember that she cares about his family. They are
Yeah.
her family as well.
That's right.
Nate is named after her, right?
That's right.
Their youngest son is named after her. So she looks at it and goes, they're gonna need their father. She does it for them as much as she does it for him, as much as she does it for everybody else they lost, everybody else who got snapped, even the people she doesn't know, right? People, living creatures on the other side of the galaxy, right? Like, she does it for everybody. So to me, I think it's very reductive to say that it's that trope, that it falls into the women in refrigerators trope. I think you're like, that's looking for a problem.
My only argument for that trope is that they did not give her any sort of funeral at the end of the movie.
That is a misstep. That's a thing that, and one of the things that the Russos have said after the fact is, well, there's still stories to tell, and maybe we'll see that in the future. So,
well, that's their easy answer for everything that happened in this movie. You could easily say, well, that's a story for another time.
Yeah, but I think that that's also valid, that like, we can have, and to me, like, she did get her moment, but it didn't happen at the end of the movie. It happened midway. Like, they get back and there's the moment on the dock where they're like, did she have any family? Yeah, we were her family. And then the Hulk throws the bench. That was like that is her family right there, mourning her. And you know, it's obviously not as pointed, and it's not as important. But she's also Black Widow. You know, she's not Iron Man. There is a little bit of a difference there, and it's maybe that's unfair to say.
But the only people that were there at the funeral were the people who have been around Widow just as much as they've been around Tony.
Sure. Like,
including the Guardians and stuff like that. They could have had a joint funeral for them, and Vision for that matter. Like, it could have been like a team thing.
Yeah.
But instead they made it all about Tony, which makes sense because he he was the one who ultimately brought everybody back and stuff. But it just seemed weird that they didn't focus on her at all.
Yeah, I do think that in a future movie, probably in whatever the next Avengers movie is with everybody together, that we may get a scene that is a memorial of everybody who sacrificed something between Avengers and Endgame, right? So we'll get like it'll be like a joint Iron Man, Captain America, because I mean, like, we know what happens to Captain America, but the world at large doesn't understand that, you know, he went into a time portal, he never came out, right? So he went back to repair the time stream, and maybe he died somewhere along the way. We don't know. Vision, Gamora, Black Widow, right? Like, that we get like a scene that says that, like, oh, well, there was a big ceremony for these Avengers. Right. Maybe
we'll see that, or it'll be like they'll flash to a monument that's been erected or something like that. But I don't think that they'll pay much attention to that, honestly.
So we come back. We've got all the stones. We put it onto a gauntlet. The Hulk is the only one who can do the snap, because this is one of my favorite callbacks. The reason why the Hulk got involved in the Avengers in the first place was because the Tesseract was giving off gamma radiation, and he's the world's foremost expert in gamma. So that's why they brought him in. And it comes full circle when they go, like, all these stones give off gamma radiation. It's almost like the Hulk was made for this. This is his purpose.
I didn't even clue into that. That's a very interesting observation.
Yeah, so this is great retcon storytelling of going, like, it's all been connected from the beginning. It's almost like the experiment, the accident with the gamma explosion that turns him into the Hulk wasn't an accident, and that was the universe creating the Hulk in order to fulfill this destiny, right? Yeah, so he puts on the glove, he snaps, and it works. it brings everybody back. We get Hawkeye's phone starts ringing. There's some birds outside, and Scott goes, "It works." But meanwhile, evil Nebula has brought everybody through the time portal. Well, not everybody,
Yeah.
a ship,
carrying everybody,
and then the ship obliterates the Avengers compound, and magically, all of our heroes survive that. Nobody questions that. People question so many things in this movie. Yeah. Nobody questions that some of these characters who are very fleshy meatbags, that they survive. I mean, like, Rocket survives. He's a raccoon.
Hey, he's resourceful.
He's resourceful for sure, but I mean, like, everything explodes around him and they all get, like, buried under. But
yeah.
We get one of my favorite moments in the movie, which is when Rhodey pops the canopy on War Machine, and despite not being able to use his legs, and these are like sort of the moments where you see, like, oh, this is what defines them as real heroes, and not just, I've got a suit, therefore. Where he goes, like, the suit's not working, he can't do anything, so he pops it and he gets out and he still saves Rocket in that moment, right? Like, which is just such a great moment. The Hulk is holding up all of the debris to save them. Hawkeye is the only, he's got the gauntlet and he's being chased by Outriders.
That was such a great scene.
Yeah.
It's like, this is Hawkeye is so awesome. I just loved every moment that he was on the screen.
I have always enjoyed Hawkeye from Thor forward. I've always enjoyed him. I've enjoyed Jeremy Renner's portrayal. I've enjoyed the way that they've treated his powers and all of the archery stuff. His action sequences to me have always been really fun and really great. This is the first time that I think that no one can complain. If anybody says, well, Hawkeye's still lame, I'm going to be like, really? Because he destroys those space dogs, right? Like, it was awesome. He makes it out of that alive, and he looks good while he does it. So,
and in a realistic manner. It wasn't like they made him unstoppable and unbeatable or whatever. Like, the choreography of that whole scene worked so that we understood how he was doing what he was doing. A lot of it was luck as well.
Yeah.
And they pulled it off really, really well. It was such an edge of your seat scene, and I just love seeing him holding this massive gauntlet and trying to run away with it too. It was
so meanwhile, really while that's happening, Cap, Thor, and Iron Man confront Thanos, who's just chilling up top, waiting for them, waiting for the gauntlet, actually, for the stones. And a fight starts between them, and they throw down, and we get the ultimate version of that first fight between the three of them from Avengers. Because we see, like, I love that in the course of this fight, we get to see them recreate moments from that first battle, but this time they're doing it on purpose. So they start off the bat with, like, Iron Man does the whole thing, he gets like all the beams or whatever ready, and then he goes, Thor, hit me, and he shoots the lightning into him and powers him up, and he's shooting beams all over the place. And then like they're doing the cool combo stuff, which is what makes the Avenger movies fun. Evil Nebula goes down, tries to get the gauntlet from Hawkeye, but good Nebula and Gamora show up to stop her. Nebula kills Nebula. And then we go back up top, and Thanos, even without the Infinity Stones, is just wiping the floor with the three of them. There's a couple of moments where the Avengers get in some good hits, Cap and Thor especially, but eventually he wears them down to just Cap, and he's beating the crap out of Cap, and he starts taking chunks out of the shield.
It reminds you that he doesn't need the gems to conquer a planet. He can do that by himself.
Yeah, that's just another Tuesday for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so
and he
great.
hasn't even brought his army down yet. This is just Thanos, and he's taking out the three mightiest Avengers, right? Not really, because we've got some cosmically powered characters, but it's sort of in this moment, like our three most important Avengers, right? So, Cap is basically ready to go down fighting. Thanos kind of backs off for a second, and Cap stands up, tightens the shield. Oh no, I totally glossed over the best part of the movie, like the best part of the movie, which is as they're sort of starting to lose, and Thanos knocks Mjolnir away from Thor. Thor's about to get his chest split wide open by Stormbreaker in a great reversal from Infinity War. And we see Mjolnir leave the ground and then hit Thanos in the back of the head and stop midair. And it's not Thor that's pulling it to him. It goes back and into the hands of Captain America, at which point Thor has the same reaction of everybody else in the theater and goes, I knew it. And then Cap does some of the best fighting he does in any of the movies, where he's fighting with the hammer and the shield. Amazing. And this is one of those points where you get to see them recreate one of the moments from Avengers, because one of the great moments in that first battle between the three of them is when Thor brings down the hammer on the shield and it causes the shockwave. And Cap does it on purpose. He chucks the shield and then throws the hammer at it, and then they both bounce and come back to him. But it creates the shockwave that throws Thanos off for a second, and he manages to get a couple of good hits in. But yeah, so then Thanos is beating the crap out of him and he's winning. Everybody else is down. Cap's the only one still standing, and then we get the comms of Falcon, and as if the moment with Mjolnir wasn't the greatest moment in the movie.
So many great moments.
Falcon says, "On your left," and then the portal opens up, and out steps everyone.
Everybody.
All of the heroes. Like there are very few characters that were dead before except for the ones that weren't dead, that were dead before. There are a few heroes that aren't present. So we do see Ravagers, but we don't see the Sylvester Stallone Ravagers. We see the Yondu's Ravagers. But amongst Yondu's Ravagers, we see Howard the Duck.
You wouldn't have noticed if people hadn't been posting screen caps of it online.
Yeah. But we get everybody. So the all of the Asgardians that were snapped out of existence are back. We get ships from across the galaxy. We get the Wakandans. We get just armies on top of armies. And meanwhile, Thanos' army has been massing. There was that awesome shot, that great perfect shot of just Cap alone against this entire army with Thanos at the head of it. Just a beautiful, beautiful shot. The sort of shot in a movie that you could blow up and frame and put on a wall. It sort of has like a Renaissance art sort of look to it. And it's almost like a slap in the face to the beginning of or not the beginning of the Helm's Deep battle, but when Gandalf shows up at Helm's Deep, and you get that great shot in the two towers of him coming down and then the clouds breaking or whatever. So they kind of recreated that. Like tonally it's very similar, but it's so much better. And then everybody comes out, and then Cap finally says Avengers Assemble, and then we fight for 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, and everybody has their moment. There are so many great things.
That fight was so well done. They thought about it so well, and my favorite part is that they didn't resort to the shaky handheld camera, and so I could see what was going on. You could follow the action, and none of it. There wasn't a single moment that was there to just fill time. It all, because there were so many characters, it all focused on showing each character doing something in their skill set that advanced the battle in some way. It's so well done. Like, by far, I think one of the best battles in any of these Avengers movies.
I mean, like, for me, this is one of the greatest fight scenes, like massive epic battle scenes in film history. The concept that we got here, like it took 11 years, but it got to we got to the movie where Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, the Hulk, Giant Man, Spider-Man, the Guardians of the Galaxy, which we didn't even care about until they had a movie. Right, for the most part, right? Black Panther, all of Wakanda, the Asgardian army, everybody is here, even Pepper Potts in the rescue armor. Everybody is there fighting side by side. And it works. Like, you believe it, and they earned it, and it's just Doctor Strange. I mean, I love the moment when Doctor Strange turns to Wong and he goes, "Is that everybody?" And Wong is like, "What? You wanted more?" And that's the moment when Giant Man bursts out of the ground with the Hulk, Rocket, and War Machine, and War Machine's got the new armor.
I'd even forgotten that they weren't in that fight at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, and Spider-Man coming back in is it's such an emotional moment. It's so good. And when Tony, having gone through everything he's gone through and changed as a character so much, he kept Peter at a distance in all of the other movies. And I mean, like, we got the moment from Homecoming when he's like, when Peter hugs him and he's like, "Wasn't a hug, I was just going for the door." But then Tony sees Peter and he just grabs him and he just embraces him because he sees Peter as a son, right? And when he looks at Morgan, he sees his failure with Peter, right? That's the moment in the house when he looks at the picture. Decides that he's going to try to figure out this time travel thing. So Spider-Man is the whole reason why Endgame happens. Because without that, they wouldn't have figured out the time travel. I don't think that Bruce would have gotten there. He didn't understand. It's not his field. Such a great cap to their story together. Although they have a great moment as Tony is dying. But yeah, we go through the whole battle. It seems like we're not gonna make it. Spider-Man ends up with the gauntlet, and activate instant kill mode is a great moment. Such a great payoff for something that was set up in Homecoming. And you think, like, okay, maybe they got it. No, they don't got it. And then Scarlet Witch has the great moment when she's about to defeat Thanos, right? Like she could have done it in that moment, but then he says rain fire and the ship starts shooting at them. And we think, like, oh no, now, like, they're outgunned. And that's when Captain Marvel shows back up. She's been conspicuously absent for the entire movie. She's like, okay, I gotta go save the rest of the galaxy. See you later. But she shows up for this fight, beats the snot out of Thanos. And we get the awesome moment. So on the nose, but so perfect, of all of the women coming together. When Peter hands the gauntlet to Carol and is like, "I don't know how you're gonna get over there," and Okoye is like, "She's not alone." And we get everybody coming together. It's so cool. So
Katie
cool.
loved that moment so much.
And they're gonna throw it into the quantum tunnel in the truck, the van, the ugly van. But Thanos stops them at the last second. The fight continues. He gets the gauntlet, and we're one of the coolest moments in the entire battle when he's fighting Captain Marvel and she's going toe to toe with him with the gauntlet. And she's got him. She's got the gauntlet, and sooner or later she's going to get it off of his hand. And he reaches over, pulls the Power Stone out, puts it like into his fist, and punches her with it, and catches her off guard. It was such a cool piece of choreography, and one of those moments where, like you were saying before, like Thanos could beat the crap out of most of these characters without the Infinity Stones, and that's why he's so dangerous with them, right?
Yes.
Because our heroes, many of them are good fighters, but like Thanos is kind of everything. He's got the intelligence of Banner and Stark. He's got the cosmic sort of power with the gauntlet of Thor. He's got the fighting prowess of Captain America. And he's got the sheer size and strength of the Hulk, right? Like he's kind of in the same way that the Super Skrull is all of the Fantastic Four together. Thanos, the way that they've constructed him in this story is very much the original Avengers all in one character. And so he's unstoppable. Or so we think until Tony manages to grab the gauntlet for 1 second. Doctor Strange gives him the heads up with the one. It's like, this is it. This is the one way. And Tony realizes what he has to do.
Yeah.
Grabs the hand. And we don't see it. It kind of happens behind the action. But the stones transfer from the gauntlet into his armor. Like into the gauntlet on his armor.
He thought about that scenario. Of course.
Well, it's
especially with because they couldn't get the gauntlet off of him in the previous movie. Yeah. So he needed to
run that scenario. Yeah.
Yep. He needed to build in some sort of failsafe so that if that scenario popped up again, he'd be able to counter that no problem.
Yeah. So he gets all of the stones onto his hand. But before we realize that, Thanos snaps and it's nothing. And there's a really great detail in this if people haven't noticed it. He snaps, and because he's Thanos and he's so strong, he dents the glove.
Oh.
Like his finger impacting on the palm of the glove actually leaves a dent. So you hear awesome. it goes like tank, like you hear the impact, and it's like this sort of flaccid metal on metal. But if you look, he leaves like a finger indent in the palm of the thing because he's so strong.
Very cool.
Yeah, but then Tony's got the stones. And it's such a great moment of, Thanos like, I am inevitable. And then Tony going like, yeah, well, I am Iron Man, which is not the line that started the whole thing, but obviously the end of the first Iron Man movie. So such a great way to cap this off. And he snaps and snaps all of Thanos' minions out of existence. So, yeah. I want to know the extent of that snap. I want to know exactly what Tony did. Like, did he just eliminate that army? Or did he in the process go like, I'm going to snap out any of these, like any of Thanos's minions across the galaxy? Because obviously there's the portion of the army that came to Earth in Infinity War, but that's not all of Thanos's army, right? Like Thanos has other ships across the galaxy. He's got guys like Ronan and such out there also fighting for him.
But Ronan, I mean, they're all lackeys at that point. Without someone to steer the ship, they're not. Yeah, they'll just disband, I would imagine.
Yeah, but so I don't know. I'm hoping that in Guardians we get a little bit of a hint of like, when Tony did that, he actually like eliminated a lot of bad guys across the galaxy. And it kind of changed the game for a lot. Like the galaxy is a much safer place, without Thanos's minions all over the place. And we'll get the sort of the scope of just how much of the galaxy Thanos had conquered. But yeah, obviously Tony can't handle all of that gamma energy from the stones. And it eventually kills him, at which point half of the audience, mostly grown men, break down into sobbing tears. And,
man, there was so much crying going on in my theater.
Yeah, it was.
And there's no music in this scene as well, so you could hear everybody sniffling and and stuff. Like it was actually quite amazing.
Yeah, I like lost it, right? Because like you said, like I have a very deep connection to this character, and I identify a lot with Tony Stark, and he is my favorite of the Avengers. I'm glad that we've got Spider-Man. Like that's sort of my only solace is that like I can very easily transition from Tony Stark over to Peter Parker because they've done such a good job with Peter. Tom Holland is such perfect casting for that character, and the way that they write him, the way that they're telling his stories. I mean, and Far From Home being the follow-up to this movie, it's like one of my top two MCU movies in the current rankings are Spider-Man Homecoming and Iron Man 3. And Spider-Man Homecoming, because it's such a perfect Spider-Man movie, is so good. And then Iron Man 3 because it is it's Tony dealing with the fallout of Avengers. Avengers is a fun popcorn movie, but when you want to get into like the deeper ramifications of what that movie means for the world that they live in, that's the story of Iron Man 3, and it's told through the lens of a very personal story with my favorite character. So like I can now transition and go like, okay, cool. Far From Home is going to be Peter dealing with Tony's death, dealing with having been gone for 5 years, the world moving on without him, and now being back. And it's like, well, the world is a safer place. Does it really still need Spider-Man? And we're going to kind of get a little bit of that with him because we've seen that in the trailer of him sort of saying, like, Aunt May is like, are you going to take the suit with you? Like, aren't you going to take this? And him going like, maybe this could just be a vacation for Peter Parker and Spider-Man can stay at home. Like, and him sort of going like, I just want to be a teenager. Like I went to the other side of the galaxy, died, came back to life, and helped fight Thanos' army. I'd really like to just focus on high school, which is the opposite of the Homecoming story, right? Where he's like, I've been introduced to this world. Now I just want to be a superhero. Screw high school. So I'm really excited for Far From Home because of that. And that's sort of the only thing that helps me keep it together when I think about the fact that Tony Stark is dead. Because there's been a couple of moments since last Thursday where I'm kind of sitting and going like, well, he's not going to be in other movies. And neither is Cap, right? Like they've essentially set up that like Cap's done too. I don't care about that. Like that's like I care in the sense that his story, like I love the way that they capped off his story, pun I guess intended, but I think that they did that character justice, and I love the character of Captain America as portrayed by Chris Evans, but his story ending doesn't have as much of an emotional impact as Tony Stark's. And obviously, you know, like they give him a daughter and the whole family angle and all that stuff. It definitely helps me identify with him even more, and it hits home even harder. And after the funeral scene, the scene with Morgan and Happy, where he's like, "Are you hungry? What do you want? Cheeseburgers," which is a callback to Iron Man, and him being like, "I'll get you all the cheeseburgers you want." Even right now when I talk about it, like the emotions come back. Like that is such a killer scene. And the performance from Jon Favreau in that scene is so good. Yeah, like I get emotional just thinking about it. And this is like the third time that's happened when I'm talking about it since last Thursday. So obviously like it's like this is impactful for me. And I talk to other people, Amanda in particular. She doesn't like Tony Stark. So for her, she's like, yeah, he died. And I'm like, oh my God, like it kills me that they did this. It's appropriate. It was time, and they did it in the best way possible. I mean, he goes out saving everybody.
Half of everybody. No, I guess he saved the other half as well.
Well, no, Hulk brings everybody back, right? But but Tony saves everybody in the battle, right? Like and also he stops Thanos from destroying the entire universe, right? Because Thanos' thing is like, well, I'm not like I can't. It obviously doesn't work to wipe out half of all life because that just leaves all of you here to fight against it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't accept that that what I did was right. So I'm just going to start over, rebuild the universe with half as many people.
Right.
And that way nobody will even remember that Captain America existed, right? And so Tony is saving the entire universe when he takes the stones and snaps Thanos out of existence. So yeah, I mean, like, there's no better way for an Avenger to die. There is, like, that is the best. That was the best way for an Avenger to die. So,
right.
Yeah. Yeah, and the funeral scene is great. I mean, we see everybody there. We even see Harley from Iron Man 3. Is there. And a lot of people were confused by that character being there because he's grown up so much and he looks so different.
Yep.
But
I was confused as well.
I'm really hoping that we're going to get a movie with... I really want a continuation of the Iron Man legacy, and I want it to be a movie with Harley, with Peter, including Pepper and Morgan and Happy, and introducing Riri Williams, who is Ironheart, and that her character will have come in via the September Foundation that was established in Civil War, where Tony funded all of the projects at MIT.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Okay.
And that we're going to find out that one of those projects was like a very young, because Riri is like a super genius. So like she would have been like let's say, I'm just going to throw a number. She's like 12 years old when that happened, right? So she'd be like a young adult, and that we get a team of Iron, like the Iron Legacy team, where you've got like Pepper, she's got the rescue suit, and you've got Spider-Man, who is obviously part of this Iron Man's legacy. Harley, who he was clearly mentoring throughout, and then Riri, and you get all those characters, and you get a new team of Iron Mans, because we've lost Iron Man.
That would be good.
And War Machine. Sorry, you got to throw him in too.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're going to see much of like Pepper and all of them anymore.
I don't know that we will. I'm just saying, like, this is something that I would love. Right?
Yeah,
like I would love to see those characters carry on the legacy of Tony Stark.
Right.
I do think that we will see Harley again. Like there's a reason why they included him at the end of this movie, and it's not just like a callback to Iron Man 3. Really? I think that Iron Man 3 set up something with that character that will hopefully be fulfilled in the future. I think one of the other things is that we've got Cassie Lang is the appropriate age. Spider-Man's the appropriate age. Hawkeye's oldest daughter is the appropriate age, or at least will be in the next couple of years when they go to do this story. They can build a Young Avengers team.
Young Avengers, yep, absolutely.
And I think that Harley will be the Iron Man equivalent in that Young Avengers team. Okay. So yeah, I think that they're building towards that. I think that like there were some really convenient story moments in Endgame that point towards that possibility.
And depending on what happens in the Scarlet Witch Vision TV show, we could if we get a Vision family, then we could also pull Vision's daughter into that story as well. Call them the champions. Instead of Young Avengers. Yeah,
we could do it. It could be the champions. And I think that that'll be one of the Phase 4 things, is building towards that. So yeah.
You want to hear my thoughts for the future?
Sure.
This is what I would love to see. Now, it's completely ridiculous, so just roll with it here, okay?
Yeah.
We have so many characters. And I think that they can all branch out into several different team movie franchises. So no more Avengers movies.
Yeah.
Instead, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp, whose home base is in California.
Yeah.
So let's have Avengers West Coast.
Yep.
And we can include the mainstays of Avengers West Coast include Scarlet Witch and Vision and Wonder Man. We could bring in Wonder Man especially if we're trying to bring back Vision, because they're very connected in the comics, and Hawkeye, and maybe bring in some new characters like Tigra or something like that.
Mm.
But we have a great group of characters that can hold their own franchise and call it Avengers West Coast, so that we are starting fresh. We have something new. It still has Avengers in the title, so it'll still sell.
Yeah.
And start fresh there. And on the other hand, we also have a group of characters that could become a team. In the 90s, Avengers West Coast turned into ForceWorks, because everything had to be extreme in the 90s, and so this was their way of being extreme. But we have like War Machine and Falcon, Captain America Falcon, and we haven't really got to the end of the movie yet. I'm jumping ahead talking about the future.
No, we talked a lot about Cap going back, whatever, and going back and living out his life.
Okay.
The culmination of that is that he gives the shield to Falcon, so Falcon's obviously going to be the new Captain America.
But
there's a Falcon and Bucky Disney Plus series that I'm guessing in the next... So Monday is when the official ban lifts on spoilers, and I think the reason why they have an official spoiler time period is because next week we're going to get announcements about some of this Disney Plus stuff, and I think one of the things will be the official announcement of the Bucky and the Bucky and Falcon series. And it's going to change from the context of it being Bucky and Falcon to being
Captain
America and the Winter Soldier, right?
Yeah. But if we have them, Winter Soldier, War Machine, and Captain America, who are all they're all soldiers. Yeah. And create a ForceWorks kind of franchise that ties in the more militaristic version of the Avengers.
And you can bring Thunderbolt Ross into that one. Like he can be their team leader. Sort of thing.
He could even be the Hulk.
One calling the shots. Oh man, making him the Red Hulk would be so great.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But then then send them off on their own franchise. And then we also have other characters like Professor Hulk and Doctor Strange and Valkyrie, who all three of them are founding members of the Defenders. Yep. Valkyrie comes in issue number 4, but pretty much the other two founding members are Namor and Silver Surfer, whom Disney now has control over once again.
People suspect that the underwater earthquake that Okoye mentions in the beginning of the movie, that's actually a setup for Namor. And that Namor's going to be the bad guy in Black Panther 2. This is also supported by the fact that apparently Ryan Coogler posted a tweet or an Instagram post or something of Namor in the past week or so, and then deleted it.
Whoops.
Yeah.
So great, because I would love it because we have so many characters. Yeah. If we can have these silos where they're doing the same thing, where they all have their solo movies. Yeah. And then they all come together into their own team movie. But now we have, instead of just one Avengers, we have 3 Avengers kind of silos.
So the one piece that, and so some of that I think is possible. The one piece that doesn't account for is that I think Phase 4, and the reason why we haven't talked about it yet, why it hasn't been announced, is obviously because Endgame has to happen first. Yeah. And they've said that Phase 4 ends with Spider-Man Far From Home. It doesn't end with Endgame. Okay. Far From Home is the last entry in Phase 4. So as we get closer to Far From Home, we'll learn more about the end of Phase 3, right? The end of Phase 3?
Yes, end of Phase 3.
Yeah, so we'll learn about what Phase 4 is after, either in the lead up to Far From Home or after Far From Home.
Right.
My gut tells me that, this isn't just gut, but this is sort of the very logical thing, is that Phase 4, it's Phase 4. We just reacquired the Fantastic Four. Phase 4 is going to very much be about building towards the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. Those are going to be the driving things. I think that Phase 5 is, after completely we've built up the X-Men, it is going to be Avengers versus X-Men. Because if you think about that, if you think about how long Phase 4 and Phase 5 are going to be, you're talking about 5 or 6 years from now. You're talking about probably, 8, 9 movies. Yeah. Right? Like, what do we do? We do 3. So if we do 3 movies every year for another 5 years, that's 15 movies? Is that real? That math checks out. And we've already got 22. 15 movies is more than enough for us to build towards Avengers versus X-Men. And it's, yeah, I think that should be their ultimate goal. I think that like the Infinity Saga is over, and I think that the next saga is Avengers versus X-Men.
Yeah. Well, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, I've talked about it a lot on many of our other podcasts. Avengers versus X-Men is my absolute favorite Marvel Comics storyline. I don't reread comics very often. It's not something that I do. Occasionally with some of the more independent stuff, I'll go back and reread something because it's a shorter series. But certainly with like Spider-Man, with the X-Men, with the Avengers, I don't really go back and read that stuff. Once you've read the story and you've seen how it plays out, you kind of, sometimes you'll leaf through a comic to refresh, right? And go like, yeah, okay, that's what happens. Avengers versus X-Men, I've read 3 times. And I'm not just talking about one book, and the one book is super thick, right? Like there's a lot of issues in Avengers versus X-Men, but then there are also 2 other main books that go along with it. And when I reread it, I reread all of it. So,
right.
Yeah, like it is hands down my favorite Marvel storyline of all time. And there's some great Marvel storylines to choose from. Superior Spider-Man's number 2, but
that's a great one. I'm rereading that one right now, actually.
Yeah, Superior Spider-Man leading into Spider-Verse, it's like, that is some of the best Spider-Man storytelling of all time. And I'm not worried about that because none of that has to be in the movies. None of that has to be in the MCU because we have the Spider-Verse universe to go tell stories in. And that's what they're doing over there. So we got Spider-Verse last year, and we're going to get a sequel to it. And apparently we're going to get a TV series or something. Like, I haven't really looked into the details on that yet, but that was announced the other day that Lord and Miller are working with Sony to do some TV stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is it really doesn't matter what they do next. We'll be there, right?
Yes.
I'll be there on opening night.
We have been there for Iron Man on opening night and every opening night since.
Yeah.
And we will continue as long as they don't mess it up. They've got their formula down. So they just keep on doing what they're doing.
Just crank them out, man.
I'll be there. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, like, 'cause think about what's coming up, what we know is coming up. So we've got Far From Home, right? We've got Guardians of the Galaxy 3 we know is in production. We've got Black Panther 2 coming.
And
we've
Doctor
got
Strange 2.
Doctor Strange 2, and we've got Black Widow, which who knows what that's going to be at this point, but it's going to be something. We also know that they will do a Captain Marvel sequel. And then obviously now that they've reacquired it, Fantastic Four and X-Men can't be far off. So I mean, I would even venture to say Fantastic Four might be as close as the post-credit scene in Spider-Man Far From Home, because Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four have a tied history, and it would be really great to see the Fantastic Four showing up, like hints at it throughout Far From Home, because like they can kind of they may have already hinted at it with the sale of Stark Tower, of Avengers Tower.
Yeah.
The guess has been that that's either gonna be Osborn, like it'll be Oscorp,
or Freedom's Plaza,
or it'll be the Baxter Building,
the Baxter Building, for Freedom's Plaza is different later.
Yeah, with the big 4 on it, right? It doesn't take much to change a big A into a big 4.
No, not at all. Well, that would be, I guess, they knew that their deal was pretty much a done deal with Fox. So they had probably had that all ready to go. Yeah,
so I'm really hoping that we get a post-credit scene that is Spider-Man introducing himself to the Fantastic Four, a la the great Spider-Man storyline where he tries to join the Fantastic Four. But they won't let him because he won't take his mask off.
Well, no, and he wants it. He thinks it's a paying job. And once they find out that, no, there's no money, he just is like, okay, forget it. I'm not into this.
Yeah. Cool, and then they won't let him join the X-Men either because he's not a mutant. Poor Spider-Man.
Good thing he has the Avengers.
Yeah. Cool. I don't know. Is there anything else that you wanted to comment on before we wrap it up?
Do you want to talk about the any time travel inconsistencies or anything like that, or how that affects?
I don't think that there are any inconsistencies. I think that they were really, really clear on how time travel works in this world.
The only question I have, I have a bunch of questions, and we can discuss this as well. But when Cap goes back, in time, he will need to just sit on his hands throughout history and purposely not get involved in anything. Nope. And at one point, he'll say to Peggy, "So you're gonna see me on TV, but younger. Mm-hmm. So this is what's happening here." And people have already been saying, the person that Peggy's married to in Winter Soldier, when she had not Winter Soldier. What is it?
Yeah, in Winter Soldier. Yeah, we don't see the picture of her husband,
right? But we know that she's married, but she's married to Steve. But she can't tell Steve that she's married to Steve. Yeah. Because she doesn't want to mess up the timeline either.
But that's not how time travel works in this story.
How does it work?
When Steve goes back, let's presume he goes back to 1945, to the end of the war, right?
Yeah.
He goes back to 1945. He then creates an alternate timeline.
But then how does he show up as an old man at the end scene?
That's when he travels back. He decides to go back and give Falcon the shield. Look,
so he actually does travel.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got the chrono GPS, right? He's got the tech. So
was he wearing that in that last scene?
I don't think that no, he's not wearing it, but that doesn't matter. I mean, he could have gone back, traveled back, and then he goes and sits down or whatever. Okay. And the Russos have specifically said that he does go back, he creates an alternate timeline, and then at some point he comes back to give Falcon the shield.
Right.
And why he waits until he's an old man, I don't know. He just does. That's what he does. And maybe to let them know that, I did it. I had a good life. Yeah. So there is an alternate timeline, and this is the thing, is that he doesn't have to be precious with the alternate timeline. He doesn't have to maintain anything, because there's no paradoxes. There's an alternate timeline
where Captain America never disappeared, and he stayed a superhero throughout history.
Exactly. So Cap goes back. This is my theory on it, at least. This is my headcanon until we learn otherwise. Cap goes back to 1945. We see it in the movie. He has his first dance with Peggy, right? Yep. They finish that, the song stops playing, and he goes, "Okay, so I'm going to start at the beginning."
Yeah. Totally.
Arnim Zola is still alive. The government has him. They intend on using him to do a bunch of stuff. But he's going to maintain, he's going to basically infiltrate what you guys are going to form as S.H.I.E.L.D. And Hydra will be reborn in the year 2015 or 2016.
So they can circumvent all of that.
Yeah, so he's going to stop all of that, right? And then at around 1960, he's going to hook up. Well, I mean, obviously, he'll still be talking to Howard Stark because they're already friends. So they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And he's going to, get back together with the Howling Commandos, and they're going to do what they need to do to stop bad guys all over the world. Right. And then eventually they're going to hook up with Hank Pym. And maybe there are some other heroes from back then that we don't even know about yet. That are going to come out of the woodwork, and they form the Avengers in the 1960s, right?
Yeah, and there is a great what if comic. What if the Avengers were formed in the 1950s, right after World War II?
Yeah,
and it includes characters like 3D Man and stuff. It's wonderful.
Yeah, so Namor might be a part of that team. The original, whoever the Black Panther is in Wakanda at that time.
Invaders. The Invaders is Captain America and Namor and the original Human Torch, whom we see in the first Captain America movie.
Yep.
We see his costume on display at the World Fair.
Yeah. So they do all that. And so the alternate timeline that Cap lives in might be a utopia, because with his knowledge of the future, he has the ability to direct events for the better. And I don't know, maybe it also goes horribly wrong, but he can go and he can just destroy an Infinity Stone so that Thanos can never do what he's gonna do. Like, he'll never be able to fulfill his destiny in that timeline, right? Like, there are so many possibilities as to what that alternate timeline looks like, but hopefully with the Disney Plus What If series, we're gonna get some of that will get that story of, like, when Cap goes back to 1945, what happens.
And Marvel should do some comic series based on that too, because one of the things that has not happened with the success of these movies is getting people like really interested in the old comics. So if we could get a series of great comics that explore these alternate timelines that are MCU canon and create an extended universe like Star Wars has, I think that would be a smart move to do.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if they can pull it off, but I don't know. I just don't think that the movie-going audience and the comic-reading audience are the same thing. No, I think people love these characters. I don't think they love the medium. No. Certainly not in the way that people like you and I do. So,
right.
I don't know. I think that they've been smart to keep that distinct, that the comic stories are the comic stories and the film and TV stuff is the film and TV stuff. And I think that with the animated What If series on Disney Plus, they have a middle ground where they can tell some MCU stories without having the budget of MCU. And the plan is that they're going to have the same actors portraying their characters, like doing the voice performances. So if Captain America shows up, that'll be Chris Evans playing Captain America. He'll just be doing it in voice form. So we'll see. We'll see what they decide to do.
Wow.
Cool. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. There's lots of possibility for the future.
I would like to see a series of one-shot animated shorts. Of Captain America returning all of the Infinity Stones to exactly where they want, because I want to see him trying to put the ether back into Jane. And I want to see him confronting the Red Skull in Soul World.
That is number one. Like, that's number one for me with a bullet. Like, I want to see that conversation between those two characters.
Totally.
Because we're talking about Red Skull, who's had a lifetime to contemplate his mistakes and his broken ideologies. And I think that the Red Skull that we see on Vormir is very different from the Red Skull that was taken by the Tesseract.
Yes.
So, I think that conversation would be really interesting, because it would essentially, to me, and again, headcanon until it's confirmed otherwise, I think that Red Skull would be like, I was a foolish mortal seeking immortality. Like I was wrong to do what I did. All of my goals were wrong. I know that now because I'm cursed to know it. Right. And so,
or maybe he blames Captain America for his current state, and he's been harboring that resentment for all these
possibly
years.
I feel like that would be a really lame way to go with it. That's such a predictable, lame comic book story of and now I will use my ghost powers to try and fight you. It's like, that's dumb. I don't want to see them fight. I want a 20-minute conversation between the two of them, where at the end Cap willingly hands him the Soul Stone, and he puts it back because he is now the guardian of the Soul Stone. He's not the Red Skull. Right? Cool. That's it for this Spoilercast. Thank you for checking it out. If you like what you hear, you can check out more great podcasts over at ThunderQuack.com. You can also like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Go back and listen to old Spoilercasts and check out some of our roundtables from a few years back. If you want to support us, you can do that in two ways. First, by going to store.thunderquack.com to pick up some merchandise based on our many different podcasts. And the second is by going to patreon.com/thunderquack and supporting us over there. You can get all sorts of great perks, like exclusive podcasts and early access to things and all that sort of stuff. So that's it for this Spoilercast. We will be back soon with another Spoilercast. I guess the next one is Detective Pikachu. So they're going to be coming hard and fast.
This summer is the summer of blockbusters.
In the next little bit, because we got Endgame, Detective Pikachu. We've got Aladdin, which we're going to do a spoiler cast for. And then, it goes out even further than that. There will be multiple spoiler casts every month.
Spider-Man.
Into July. So
Men in Black.
Yeah, Men in Black. So look forward to all of that. And thank you for listening to the full, over 2 hours of this. Considering the movie is 3 hours, I think we did pretty good.
We made good time.
Yeah. Thank you, Kurtis, for joining me. Everybody should go and check out the Epic Marvel podcast specifically to listen to Kurtis. If you want to hear more from me, you can check out both Rebel Cells and Quiver the Green Arrow podcast for Star Wars animation and Arrow, respectively. And of course, the ThunderQuack podcast.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you guys on the next Spoilercast.
Make my Marvel.